5:32, and I will call the special meeting of the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District Board to order. And I will pass it on to you, Mike, if you have something to start us out with.
No, I don't think so. I think we're just gonna move Madam President right into the strategic planning workshop component of the meeting.
Okay.
So we have Yanni here and
Okay.
Emily and Camilla.
All right, well, who wants to kick this off? Emily, Yanni?
I'll kick it off. How's everybody
Okay.
doing? It's been a little while, so it's nice to see everybody again. So two big things. Yep.
Do we need to do a roll call?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, we do. Jackie B?
Oh, what do I do? I've not done this before.
Dave,
Do the roll call
Start
if you'd
calling
like.
names. You just start calling out the board members. I can do it too. Would you
Oh,
rather-
I can just say everybody's name.
Yeah.
Jackie Anderson, President
Here.
Anderson,
Mhm.
or do I use a title?
Yeah.
Manager Schmaltz,
Here,
Manager Taves,
here,
Manager Baki,
I am here.
Manager Lowe.
Here.
Okay, we are all present. Okay, Yanni, go back to you.
Okay, wonderful. So agenda today, two things to kind of get through. We have a couple more meetings, right, to kind of finalize some things. We've made some great progress when it comes to mission, vision, values. And I want to just take a couple minutes on the front end. We've got graphics up on the website. It seems like there's been some feedback that's come back on that. So I want to just make sure the board has some time to just make sure that we're aligned and we're good and there's no real major changes that need to happen on that side. And then we'll make our way into kind of deciphering and pulling apart the 10-year plan. I think that there's been some work outside of our time together in regards to aligning some timelines, et cetera, on some of the initiatives that are going to be kind of starting to make their way into our window as we kind of progress through the 10-year plan. So I want to make sure that we take that, keep that top of mind, right, and kind of bring that into the call as we start to kind of list out milestones for the next couple of years. But as mentioned, the goal is to take something that's very broad and macro, right, but also has a ton of detail packed into it and turn it into something that is incredibly actionable, easy to understand, and something that can be easily conveyed, whether it's to staff, whether it's to the public, et cetera. But mostly it's for action-oriented purposes, right? We want to make sure that everything that we kind of convey and kind of reformat is through the lens of being as actionable as possible. So that's whether it's, details to support particular initiatives, timelines, right, in regards to estimates on particular initiatives, et cetera, et cetera. But that's pretty much where we stand. I'll just kind of open the room to questions real quick, or any feedback or anything that somebody wants to just kind of just kind of bring to everyone's attention. Otherwise, we'll kind of dive in. But any questions, anything at all from anybody?
No, not for me.
Okay. Wonderful. Everybody see my screen okay? Our website, our values, is that what's coming up here? No?
I'm not seeing anything. Are you?
See a Google Doc.
yeah, I see.
Let's do it this way. How about now?
There we go.
There.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Has everybody seen this and taken some time to go through it? Some yes, everybody?
yes,
Okay, wonderful. I'm gonna pull up one more version. Okay, and just let's just to validate, so obviously this is the interactive version, right, of our mission, vision, our values, okay? Primarily just kind of going around. I think we all kind of enjoyed just the automation incorporated into it, etc. And then when there is a need for something that's a bit more, that's either PDF format or more of a kind of in-person deliverable that we don't have the luxury to incorporate any automations, we have this. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's how I understood it.
Okay.
It's good.
Perfect. So let's go, we're gonna go around the room. If somebody wants to volunteer to start us off. Any feedback? Any issues? Do we like it? Do we not like it? Anything at all? Hopefully we'll be able to move through this pretty quickly.
Okay, I'll start. I think it looks great. And you can pull those separate things out and look at them individually like we talked about. So I think it hit all the bases.
Yeah.
For me, I'm just gonna go in any kind of order here. Manager Baki? What do you think?
Yes, I agree. I think it looks terrific. It is a little bit busy. I'm just wondering about the graphics that are in the center around our logo. If those are really necessary, I'm not sure what those stand for, but yeah, I think just to take out some of the busyness, my recommendation would be to try it without the graphics. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Now that you bring it up, it really doesn't serve a purpose, does it?
I don't think so. I just think it adds more visual material. The focus should be on the words, I believe. And
Yeah,
and I think
We
that
can make
might
them-
help.
yeah, we can make the logo bigger too, so that doesn't get lost in the middle. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just
Thank
those
you.
same graphics, right,
Yeah.
are kind of incorporated into the automation side of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are we okay with it in this particular format, not so much on the PDF? Does that make sense?
You know, I really didn't know what all of that meant. I mean, I could see a brain there, so. So that's on the mindset one, but I don't know that the others really have a meaning.
Well, it's a design element that carries from the interactive to the static. That's the
Mhm.
function it's serving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But is it necessary? I know you know a lot about this, Doug. Is that necessary? When it's not clear what it really means, does it have to be there?
I think by design work, it really helps to carry the thought around on the interactive, and then that
Okay.
translates over into the static part. On the static one, the PDF there, if there's a way to kind of de-emphasize them a little bit, maybe it would do the trick.
Ah, okay. Good thought. Manager Lowe?
Can you go back to the static one? Thank you.
Yeah.
I was also going to comment on the icons. I think if we want to remove them, they could be removed. At least we should reduce their size. And the only other thing that I thought would be good is to figure out a way to break up the values and the description. So I don't know if it's a different font color or if it's maybe a more bold or thicker font on the values. I think the description is fine. I would just like to see, like if you're looking at it quickly, I'd like to see it pop, the values pop more. And then if you want to, as a reader, engage more and read more about each one, you have the information there.
Mhm. Okay. Manager Schmaltz?
I would get rid of the icons also. I just think they make it difficult to make the transition. Your eyes focus too much on them. And then I'm okay with everything else. I guess it could stand a little bit more emphasis on the main values, as Chris said. But to me, we don't want to make it any more complicated either by circling them or something like that. So I think maybe we could try a couple things and see how it works. But I think if you get the icons out of there, it allows you to focus. It's kind of, the icons make it like a 3D deep thing. And so that's your second view. And then your third view is actually in the background. So that's what I don't like about it. So on the icons.
Well, try to envision it without the icons. I think the design just falls apart then.
I kind of agree with that.
I guess we'll have to see it to know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Right.
think with the logo bigger and those icons gone, and then raising the type on the titles, I think that's what you were getting at.
Well,
Right?
I'm not sure what it looks like before we open it up. Do we
Mhm.
actually have the values in a little circle around the big circle? Is that what it looks like? And then you click on the innovative mindset that you can't read because it's so small and it breaks out into the bigger one? Is that the way it works?
Yeah. So you're talking about on the animated side of it?
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you hover over, right, it pulls them right to the center, right? And I don't know, again, we have the luxury of being on a website, right, and landing page with our logo at the top, our values, etc., right? So you can simplify it, but it still has layers and depth to it, right? There's a level of complexity in this particular setting that I think works. Again, yeah, you could probably break it up in regards to maybe some of the colors and whatnot of like the value itself and the actual explanation. But yes, that's kind of the mentality, is that you just kind of hover over, and then based on each of these icons, right, which is really kind of the driving force behind each value, you click the icon, and then it drives you in and tells you exactly what that icon means.
So the icon is an icon. It's not the circle very small reduced with the same color.
Correct.
Okay.
I think I know what you're saying. Yes.
Is the icon integral to the performance of the draw out? So I'm not getting, I mean, can you still just hover over the circle and get the same thing, or is
No.
that icon part of the,
Yeah, you have to hit the icon, at least in this particular iteration.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Administrator Kenny, go ahead.
Madam President, managers, yeah, I had given some feedback, but, we decided just to let this go forward, so then the board could respond to it, but if we go to the static piece, I like this part, but if we went to the static piece, yes, these icons are outsized compared to the other one. I do agree that, that they could be, reduced. But the other piece was that, was somehow making these in such a way that they overlap so that our values are connected. Right now, they're all seemingly independent of each other in this visual. So I don't know how to necessarily do that, but I think one is to have the smaller text in the one that's animated, and this one, it would be just the larger piece, but just an initial thought when I first saw it was that I think it did went to that busyness, but also it just seemed like our values were all separated rather than somehow being together.
I hadn't thought about that, but.
Yeah, we could do a
Them all in
couple.
the circle with the icons is somewhat connected, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I just think the size, like you said, the icons are bigger in the static version than they are in the animated version.
Right.
I mean, part of me could do away with the color. I don't know. I love negative space. I think the eye loves negative space, and it allows you to just kind of things to flow a little bit better and for you to kind of move from one area to the other. Do these colors hold any significant value for the organization, or no? We just kind of pulled them out.
Well, our four, excuse me, our four major sub watersheds are identified by color.
Okay.
So there's green, yellow, sort of a, I don't know what you'd call that, sort of a light orange, I guess.
Okay.
Almost the colors that you've got, and
Yeah.
then purple.
Okay.
So,
Okay. They do have there is a symbolic reason behind that. That makes sense.
yeah,
Okay, that's great.
Well, can this be tweaked? I mean, is this the company that we're working with from Duluth?
It's Adam.
Adam, okay, his connection?
No, he did it, I think.
No, we're using a company that he had
Oh,
used
okay.
in the past.
Right.
Can they do some of the examples that we talked about tonight and just let us take a look at it?
Yeah, Madam
Do some
President
of
and the
this?
board, yeah, I'm taking notes furiously here and we'll tweak things and yeah, Pinnacle
Okay.
Marketing is the one that kind of came up with the images that we're looking at. So we certainly will take the feedback and we can come up with more examples.
Okay,
So I
I
have
think
one,
that's what,
I have
go
one,
ahead.
one question. What does it look like when we collapse it down before we open it up? In other words, that's when everything's opened up and that's the static version. Go back one more step. What does it look like before you do that?
Like here you're on this one.
No, we can't have. Yeah. So you have the logo there all the time. So when you take these broken out colors away, those big sets out, will we just have the logo with those symbols, icons there? Is that what it looks like?
Yes. Yes.
So that has no meaning whatsoever. Why don't we have the like innovative mindset in that circle replacing the icon and make it bigger on the page so you can actually read the headings without even going to the interactive part? If you want to learn more about what it means, you click the interactive part, is what I'm thinking, because I mean, none of those things mean values to me. I mean, I'm going to look at that and it looks like a piece of Swiss cheese, an ice cream cone, something boiling in a pot.
Yeah.
So it has no relevance to what we're trying to communicate at all. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, that's why I haven't seen it by itself. If we could take all those colors away and just show it before you open it up, that would be nice to see, I think.
Hmm.
What
Yeah,
do
and I
you,
think
what do you mean open it up?
Well, I want to know what it looks like before we push the little buttons and break it out to a static view like this with all the colors on it.
Well, this isn't on the site. This is a PDF that you hand out to people.
so. This would be the document. There would be no interaction, no simplification. This is exactly how people would receive it, right? So it'd have the context.
Okay, so when you're on the website, then is this what shows then on the website?
It's a
No,
similar, yeah. It's similar in the fact that it uses the same icons.
Okay,
Right.
so I see right now. So those icons is what bothered me, because when you push that, you get this, which is fine. But why don't we put this title in that circle and make it big enough in the page so you can actually read it a little bit if you don't even want to open it up?
Well, the header's above that. The whole page header's above that.
Yeah. So we have this, right? And then we come down and like, if you put like full context here, right? You come to the page, these are our values, our logos at the top, and then the
But
assumption.
you only see one at a time. You only see one value at a time. I want to
Yes.
see all 6 values before I click them open. I don't want to see, so then I know those are my values and I click on each one to get a more detailed explanation of each one. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I totally understand that.
I mean, it's clever, but I mean, you could do the same thing with the words inside those circles and having color coded to what it's going to be. So you press on the blue circle which says innovative mindset that you can read, and then it opens up to give you the explanation in the same color.
So you're
in the
saying
center of the circle.
take these titles, right? Science-based decision making, which is our bottom, and it should say that at the bottom here, right? It should all be connected with a circle. You essentially put your cursor over, science-based decision making, and then you get the explanation that goes deeper on that particular value.
Correct. In other words, you eliminate the fine print of what explains it, you reduce the circle down and put it on the big circle all the way around. And they're color coded. So when you open it, it's also green or red or brown or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. Does everyone agree that the icons, right, that have been produced should go?
I don't.
I
I
like
think
them.
they stand, I see what they stand for.
Okay. If we do keep the icons, and Adam, this is for you, this one's just a little cut off here. In regard, like if you just kind of compare the two.
I'm okay either way. Let's just vote on it so we can move ahead here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're gonna come to a conclusion. I think we're just, we'll give some feedback. If we're gonna do one more round here, eventually we need to just like drop a hammer and make a decision. Again, we want it to be right, but we want to make sure that, it's conveying our values, right? And in a way that we all stand behind and makes sense and is eligible.
I'd just like to reiterate what Manager Anderson had suggested, Adam, and that is to reduce the size of the icons and increase the size of our logo and try that as one option that we could look at. So I think, the icons, I think can work for us. I understand it better now that we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But that would be one thing I'd like to see at some point, if we could. Thanks.
I mean, I think if again, you have to connect the dots a little bit, but each icon does a pretty good job of conveying, right, the value in a picture format, in my opinion, at least.
I agree.
Right. I think pretty good job.
Well, I think we've got about 4 different distinct methods to look at, some different iterations. And I think Adam was taking notes, so let's give it back to the graphic people and have them come back to us with these different iterations.
I think that's a great idea.
What we might also want to consider, our opinion isn't so important because we know all about this already. But, maybe we should let people look at it that have never seen it before and let them pick which one they think is best communicates. Be very easy to do at one of our seminars. Just give them a sheet, let them vote on it and go from there. So that's just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're getting a pretty good differential in ideas, from the board here. So I would recommend that we have that go back to the graphic artists, give us those different perspectives, and then let's see where it goes from there. I don't disagree with what you said, Manager Schmaltz, but if there's a small population at these meetings that are coming up, that's really not going to help us too much.
Yeah.
So I just think that the board's input has been diverse enough that we're representing the public. It's all about keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And so all of these things that happened that we talked about today, I think are trying to get us there to a simpler version that's more eye-catching. And I'm not a fan of the icons. I had a hard time understanding, what they're really representing. And so that took a while. So I'm not convinced that those are the right, if we're gonna use icons, those are the right ones.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
If it
Can I
takes
make a
us
comment?
15 minutes to figure it out, we're not going to have 15 minutes to explain it to each person we meet.
It
I don't
didn't take me 15 minutes to figure it out.
Yeah,
I
I
saw it
think there's-
immediately, knew what it was.
I think
Okay, I
there's
think
some
it-
just misunderstanding of the reason why we have 2 different versions here, to be honest.
Mhm. Yep, so let's
Well,
take a look at some of those
can I-
new iterations and
Can I
let's
make a
move
quick
on.
comment? Can I make a quick
Yes.
comment?
Absolutely.
On the interactive design, I think if you had the circles around the icons, it would help differentiate them and set them apart a little bit from the design itself. I think that would help draw attention that there's more options there. It's really pretty muted right now. You see what I'm saying?
Just outline these, right?
Yes, as they are on the PDF.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I mean,
All right,
listen,
Can we
the
move on
icons
then?
need to serve as a vessel to be able to get to the information that we're trying to convey and making sure that that stays right at the kind of the top of the totem pole here. If we use icons to do that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think that, we don't want them to feel like that's the purpose of the interactive element, or that's the purpose of the PDF, etc. Right? It should just be a button or something like that. Something that doesn't really
or the circle itself
correct.
is the button. So you don't need an icon to do that. Anyway, again, I think let's turn it over to the graphic artists and tell them that we want to explore these other iterations, and they'll give us they'll give us a version and we can look at them again. Everybody okay with that? Can we move on?
Mhm.
Yep, sounds
right.
fine.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Yanni, you're in charge, so you take us to the next spot.
Give me 1 second. Does everybody feel pretty like they've given the 10-year plan, right, a simplified version or their own kind of priorities in the form of initiatives, milestones, etc.? Like, does everybody feel like they've given that enough time and attention, independent of being together?
Well, I think I have. I'm sure everybody believes that. And
Yeah.
so now it's a matter of bringing it together. And there's a lot of similarities from looking at everybody's input.
All right, there's 2 things we're going to do to kind of kick this off. Okay, number 1 is I'm going to show you kind of our format once more. We're going to start kind of putting the puzzle pieces together. It sounds like everyone has taken the time to fully understand what all those pieces of the puzzle are. Now we have to figure out how they kind of can, put themselves together. After we look at the format, I'm going to go through our vision and our mission and just the high level of our values again. I know we've beat this to death, but as we recall, right, the whole purpose of kind of focusing time on this one box of this format is to have an understanding of what our North Star is. What are we coming back to? How do we prioritize certain things? Why is something more meaningful to someone as opposed to somebody else, etc. Okay. So just to kind of summarize, and this is really our first meeting of diving into this. We've done a little bit of prep work just to get familiar again with the 10-year plan, where we were when we built it, where we are now, and where we're trying to be over the course of the next 3 years. I'm a firm believer in that 3 years is 3 to 4 maximum, right? Again, some projects take longer than that, but it's very difficult for any human brain to fully comprehend and see with enough of a runway what anything beyond that 3 to 4 year kind of time period is, right? You can have high level things that are thrown up at the board, but there's so many variables that can happen during that 3-year process that can either derail that can pivot you, that can point you in another direction, that can present a new opportunity, etc. So I know we work in these 10-year kind of brackets, if you will, right? Our goal here is to bring them into a more actionable format with a 3-year kind of limit on this. And my hope is that we walk away with something that we can kind of convey and utilize, but most importantly, every couple of years, we're able to spend a couple hours, nothing too crazy, right? To be able to really ensure that the next 3 years, right, we're aligned on. Okay, so we have macro and then we have kind of that mid-level, and then we can get down to the micro to be able to convey this with intention and clarity to the staff to be able to execute consistently. So we started with vision. That's where I always start. Frankly, we spent, almost 3 months, right, on the vision of the organization. From there, it led into our mission and then our values. I want to ensure that we convey this, that we keep those top of mind while we go through this process. So this meeting, next meeting, anytime we come together, we're going to start with going through these. So I'm going to pull those over and then we're going to kind of start diving in here. And we're going to go around the room, okay? And we're going to let everybody kind of start to speak to some of this. I have a couple things and feedback of just people that have simplified that 10-year plan to be able to bring to the table so everyone can have visuals to associate it. And we're just going to start having at it and figure out what the best way is. The more people, the more complex this process becomes. Okay, so our vision. We see a future of continued collaboration with our citizens and communities that improves and sustains the quality of water resources. Okay, that's where we're going. How we're getting there is to protect and enhance local ecosystems and natural water resources. Fiscal accountability and transparency, collaborative and community engagement, innovative mindset, service-oriented approach, equity and inclusion, and science-based decision-making. So all of these are now going to be used as we kind of start the next part of our conversation here. Okay. Typically we do this with 2 or 3 people, 2 partners, 1 business owner, right? It's very easy to bring it back to the individual or back to the organization. Seeing that we have quite a few of us, we're going to start kind of going down the room, and hopefully people either have kind of, you know, a mental understanding of what things need to happen over the next couple years, or have their own kind of notes, right, in regards to the same thing. But we're going to start with this year, right? January just closed. We're about halfway through February. There's probably a lot that's already in motion in regards to milestones, things that need to be completed or that we are hoping to complete in this particular calendar year. So I can start poking around the room and calling out on people if we want to just kind of go around in regards to how I see people on my screen. It's entire, or if there's somebody that wants to volunteer and start to just kind of start the conversation off with some of this, that'd be super helpful.
I'll start it off because I think this year is already planned out. So we've done this already. It's in our budget for 2025. So all the activities that we're going to be doing on or have to be funded, and we've got all that worked out already for 2025. So if we just page through the budget, you would see what projects we're going to work on, what programs we're going to work on, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you might fine tune that a little bit more in terms of explaining what each of those lines means. But those are the things that we've committed to get done, and that we've also forecasted money to use to get those things done. And of course, we'll probably not get a lot of them done because we're dealing with Mother Nature. And as you said before, there's even more delays in this kind of a business than a regular business. Plus the fact there'll be a lot of new things that pop up, like ice jacking, that wasn't even on our radar beginning of last summer. But we'll have to spend some resources on that this year. So there's a combination. You can see how quickly things have changed. So I think we have a system set up that rather than looking at a 3-year implementation plan, we run it basically, Yanni, on an annual basis. And that starts in June when we do the 3 or 4 month budget exercise, bringing forward the stuff out of the 10-year plan and getting it laid out and deciding what has to get done in 2026. That starts this summer.
Okay.
So do you understand how that's working? And then the same, and it's been working very well for us. I mean, for all the years we've been doing this, it gets better each year. And I think that I don't know how much we're going to gain by going through this again, is what I'm saying. So I think what might be more helpful, but I'm just raising this as an issue, and then people could comment on it. Manager Anderson took an attempt at writing the what's going to happen or what we're trying to get done as a watershed district in her mini strategic plan, which would come right after the stuff we've already worked on, mission, values, and vision. So
Okay.
What we need is somebody can take those 3 documents, those 3 points, and read them, and then can read 3 or 4 short paragraphs that summarize what's going to happen, what we're trying to get done in the long term, but also maybe in the short term too, to a certain thing in terms of what the emphasis is going to be. And that gives you a kind of a mini package in maybe 2 sheets or 3 sheets of paper that somebody's more likely to read than obviously even picking up two volumes of a 10-year plan. So I just wanted to throw that out because I see how everybody else feels about it. So.
Thank you, Manager Schmaltz. Who else would like to talk to this point?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Manager Anderson.
I thanked you
Oh, okay.
for your input and asked which of the other managers would like to speak next.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, nobody's coming forward. I'm going to give my thoughts on it, and it's outlined, as Manager Schmaltz just said, in this little, preview document that I did. But I think there's an important underlying piece of all of this that I don't think has been really addressed or respected enough as we go through this. We are a science-based, singular focused unit of special government. And we exist for that purpose. And in order for us to do what we have to do, we have to rely on the experts that we hire. So EOR has been our engineering firm since nearly the beginning. There are a few years that they weren't here, but when we got organized and had our own first administrator, they were the team that we brought on board, and they've been with us ever since. And the value of that is that we have the scientists that we are required by statute to have. And they have laid out a plan that goes from, this was another firm that actually came up with a plan, but the concept was to break it down into manageable areas, sub areas. And we started at the beginning of the flow pattern for us, and we're working our way down. And it's taken, we celebrated 25 years last fall, and we're coming into those last two areas. Now, there have been some big projects done in the meantime to resolve some of the issues that were the foundation of the district. But we have to follow that scientific premise through to the end. We did Bone Lake sub-watershed first. We came back down into Forest Lake. And now we're in the Little and Big Comfort areas in the Chisago County portion. And that's all pretty well laid out by our engineers. There's tweaking that has to go on because that first diagnostic study for those Comfort Lakes were done a number of years ago. So that's in the process of being updated. And the projects that come out of that engineering process is what we have to follow. It doesn't make any sense not to do that and continue the way we've done in the past. So to me, we have to rely on our engineers for that basic part of what we do. And the other part is the programs that we've set up, like the AIS program is really big with us. It's doing good work. And so we're not going to set those aside. Those still have to be funded because they're useful. And we have to keep up the data collection in order to have that robust data set that we need to determine if our lakes and our waterways are maintaining that clarity that we have been spending a lot of time and money on. So to me, the strategic part that needs addressing is not what we've done, what we've set up, and that's working good. The new piece will come from the engineers, like we said, on the projects for the Little and Big Comfort area, and that's pretty well laid out. We just need to update some of the data and see if anything's changed in the last 10 years. And the next part is really, if you want to call it new, it isn't new to us, but it's a different focus than we've had in the past. And that's more district-wide. And that's the climate change, or what we call green space as well, area. And under that umbrella, we have our flooding issues, which we're addressing now. We're starting a period of reaching out to the public to explain what that next phase means. But it's all part of the grand plan of getting the watershed district in order from an environmental and healthy stage. So those have to rely on that, like I said, that scientific basis. The other big one for us is going to be the new building. And we've talked about it for a number of years now, and it's time to really get serious about it. And so that's going to be something new. That's more of an operational thing that we have to do. It's not going to impact the water clarity, but it's going to give us a better place to accomplish what we need to accomplish. We've pretty much used just leased space, some of it very inadequate, but we're entering that stage. So that's going to be something new. It's a big public project that is outside of the clean water focus, but necessary for the district to go forward. And so that's how I looked at it, is we've got these scientific things that we have to do. Some are still very focused on a sub-watershed level in Little and Big Comfort. We also have that climate change resiliency, big umbrella, big tent that includes a number of different things, primarily flood control and getting our communities to understand through the work that we've done in identifying areas that are prone to flooding, and to help them make better decisions on land use and development decisions. So to me, they're very distinct, but necessary. And to me, what we have to concentrate on in an exercise like this is not what our engineers are doing, but these other things that go outside of the realm of the projects and the programs. If that makes sense. It's an operational challenge.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, just think about this through my lens, right? I've owned a small handful of businesses and a couple small different industries, right? But I work agnostically with different companies, organizations, etc. Am I the industry expert that's going to be able to bring the expertise and the granular detail that an engineer would, or someone who's doing design work or understands the intricacies of digital marketing, etc.? No, I'm not, right? We rely on experts to provide that for us. And if you have the luxury of having relationships with individuals that are giving you very clean, concise, very detailed plans of action in those the scientific aspect of what we do and some of those things, that's great. But in my opinion, that's still just a piece of what we do, right? There's, you know, I have a couple different iterations here on my screens, you know, one from Manager Schmaltz, right? We have yours, Manager Anderson's. I have kind of a summary from a strategic planning for a 5-year kind of timeline from the staff. Right? And there's a lot of different things on all of them. That makes sense, right? It's interesting to kind of see that. And I think the one fundamental thing when you think about simplicity in action, to your point, it is the operational side, right? It is the community outreach. It is the things that are outside of those bounds of the expertise of what we're doing, and that we utilize professionals to give us those resources or to give us that foresight that we're looking for. Does everyone agree with that and understand that? Is that like, we don't need to make a list of, you know, I think the more specific and scientific something gets, the more broad it should be in this particular format, right? And when we start to think about education, for example, right? If that's a priority over the next 5 years plus, well then, you know, that's something that we can probably start to detail out and figure out how are we going to layer that into this to either get buy-in for some of those scientific projects or to prove value from some of those scientific projects, etc. So this is very much through an operational lens. And I think everybody.
Yeah, well, and I think we've been talking about the lack of, not the education and outreach portion, but the public relations, marketing, you know, whatever term you want to call it. It's a broad communication policy to tell the public what we've done with the levy dollars that they've given us, the grant dollars that we've received so that we can do more, and giving them the assurance that this district has been successful. We haven't told the story. We have done it in little bits and pieces here and there. But I think everybody's agreed that we've got to do a better job on that. And we're in the process now, I hope, of having requests for proposals out into that sector, into that specialty sector. So we've already got that plan together, you know, after several years of going back and forth and then finally just saying it's got to be done. So I think that we're on that path. So beyond that, we have a work plan that we did several years ago on the personnel that we're going to need as the district, you know, goes down the next 10-year path, for example. So we've got that pretty well laid out. Now that could change, and it needs to be updated when it needs to be updated. But I'm struggling with what isn't already addressed and what we're going to gain from this particular exercise we're doing.
Yeah,
So I'm struggling with that because I think that we've already identified those things.
so I don't want to, you know, kind of throw, just kind of throw Mike on the spot here, but, you know, Mike, from like a staff perspective, right, because that's a huge piece of it, you know, all of the decision making happens within, you know, this group of individuals. But a
Mhm.
lot of the implementation and execution, right, is happening from a staff perspective. I'm curious, you know, if there's something in particular that, you know, Mike has noticed in the past, or something that, you know, would provide more value for him and his staff in regards to clarity and alignment and accuracy in regards to where we're going, right, or where we are and where we're going and how we're going to get there with some of these things.
Okay, Mike,
All right,
You're
Madam
on.
President, managers, well, I think, the plan itself has always been an extremely useful framework for giving sort of the breadth and depth of where the district can be at any time, right? So, and with the intention of this is where we want to go. So the last plan was calling for clean water work out to 2040 and beyond. So, and we've gotten there in a much faster timeframe. So as we were pivoting in the development of our current plan, we were looking at, you know, what are the next things that we want to work on, and I feel like it's been pretty consistent, I think, and this is what Manager Anderson saying, the Greenway flood resiliency piece, along with the shoreline, has been the things that have floated to the top, sort of the cream that's come up. But along the way, there's always a lot of additional things that happen, and we've made some attempt to, you know, quantify, if you will, how much of our time is spent on things that is not planned for. And I would say that 20% is probably a fairly accurate percentage. And the ice heaves are gonna be one of these, like the full extent. I mean, we're talking about the potential of being millions of dollars of work that private citizens will look to engage in this next year to restore their shorelines. So and so it's an opportunity once within whatever time frame that we will want to maybe see if we can't, you know, shift a large section of the population that is on Forest Lake in particular, that's received most of this damage. So, so adaptive management has always been, I guess, is one thing that we've always leaned on. Staff knows that it's, you know, annually, a lot of things they'll say, what we, you know, let's take a look and how can we do this or that better, you know, let's get more documentation or frame things framed up, and everybody's responded very well to that. So all that being said, though, the strategic plan piece and putting more in writing what some of these priority things are, I think is important, not only for staff, but just for the community. And especially then, because we have these two major natural resource things, plus an array of other things that we're looking into. Manager Loth just brought up this morning, hey, are we sampling for microplastics in our stormwater? That's a great question. So, and is it now an emerging issue that we should be evaluating or potentially treating? Chlorides is clearly an issue that we need to deal with. It's no longer an emerging issue, it's an issue. And will that surpass some of these other things within just a couple of years? You know, it may. So it's, you know, so it's part of it is being able to shift. But for right now, that's the value of this effort, in my opinion, is giving, you know, as you're saying, a 3-year window of staff, this is what we think collectively as a board we need to work on. And, you know, one of those again is how much effort needs to go into that building, you know, or the, because, you know, we're sitting on top of each other right now in this space that we're at. You know, it's very undersized, for our needs. And it's really restricting our ability to function at the higher level that the board has set for us, but we somehow managed to kind of still pull through. So, I don't know, is that what you're looking for, Yanni?
Yeah, I think it's helpful, right? I think it validates, you know, kind of what is the granular detail, right, in regards to here and there. And if we have this in some way, shape, or form, right, that's more long format, okay, or has, I don't know, a scientific tone to it because that's necessary, I think that's fantastic, and there's nothing wrong with that. But ensuring that we all understand, there's only so many resources to go around, and resources meaning probably time and money, right? And with some of these priorities, I think maybe we would be able to move a little faster, right? If maybe that 20% was allocated exclusively to a couple high-level initiatives that were just kind of up on the board for the year, right? Or for the quarter, or for a 2-year period. And again, the 3 to 4 year kind of mindset, right? That's just like what I've seen in my experience, okay? And I know for myself, like, things change over 3 years. And I think if you think about some of the issues that you're facing that you want to start to kind of work into the conversation now that maybe weren't a part of the conversation 5 years ago, I think just validates that theory in general. But if you're working on a 5-year timeline, a 10-year timeline, right, and you have the skill set and the manpower, or the resources to be able to operate and stay on track during that entire time period, fantastic. But if we find ourselves dipping and weaving in those ebbs and flows start to become more, just more significant, or drawn in one area opposed to another because of trends, or where, what's being said within the community, or, what exists in general in regards to potential problems that have made their way into kind of our community, et cetera. And us kind of pivoting and being reactive to some of those things, which then force us to take resources away from kind of those fundamental initiatives that we're really trying to achieve. This building itself keeps coming up. I'm curious, how long have we been kind of talking about, a new building and all of the value that more space would provide for us?
At least 5 years.
Okay.
Double that,
Okay, 10 years.
10 and a half. It'll be 11 years in June when the board was informed the city no longer had space for us.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
What's the fundamental objection or hurdle to, like, get that designed, find a location? I don't know. Again, I don't know how far we are during that process. If we're still like early days, then I'm sure anything design related, right, is probably step one, just to have an understanding of what it is. But what's been kind of holding us back, right, from being able to get that done in a 3-year period or a 5-year period?
If I may, I think it's been the fact that we haven't hired a consultant to really take charge of that project.
Okay.
We clearly don't have enough bandwidth with Mike, being, everything, the head of everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the biggest problem, but as luck would have it, we've got new owners to this building, and in that relationship, a new opportunity was presented, where we don't have to go through the public wrangle of using levy dollars or taking out loans or anything like that to build this building that we want. And I explained that in my little strategic mini plan. But the point is that we can continue to do what we're doing now, and that's lease the building. And so that frees up a whole bunch of time in doing what would have taken a long period, many months of public in-course, I mean, with the public, making sure that they step every part of the way. And the beauty of that is, we're going to have a building that, we're going to be the leaders of how it looks and, you know, where it's located. And the builder is, the owners would be the builders, to our design, needs. And then, we just sign a long-term lease, which we do anyway. You know,
Yeah.
government entities are prized renters.
Yep.
Because the owners know that they're going to get their money. Banks look very favorably on that. So when you're building a new building, you've got already a long-term lease client. And so that goes smoothly for them. And the public, of course, does not have to pay extra levy monies for that. So it's a win-win all the way around, but we need to talk about that more. You know,
Yeah.
that opportunity has just been maybe 6 months before us. Mike?
Yeah, President and managers, so Yanni, just for full disclosure, one of the principal reasons that I was pushing the board on the strategic planning piece was to incorporate some discussion about about the building, you know, and, I mean, get to the point of, because one of the, and I absolutely agree with everything that Manager Anderson is stated from that perspective. But there's also then what drives the design is then, critically is for the board to have consensus of, what's the focus of the education, outreach program? You know, are we going to, does it need to have a footprint large enough for school buses? Does it need to have I've just recently suggested that we start an exercise where we try to identify, we're not trying to identify a location, but rather a vision of, and maybe you could help with this, Yanni, like what would an ideal site look like? Would it have a wetland? Would it have a prairie? Would it have access to a lake or a trail or something like that? So, you know, for the board to come to consensus, because the other piece, we've had a fairly substantial history of partnering with universities for research, and there's more of that opportunity. So we could have another space for, you know, some on-site research activity or staff even from some of the universities to be housed here. So, but that require then some additional building. Whether then it's, you know, we also look for maybe some grant funding or foundations or things like that, but there's definitely some steps in here that need to get worked out. And so, but I think this is a very important piece of that.
But that can be resolved by hiring the consultants that work in that space. You know, and I think the other thing that's been holding it back is not having the people on board that would relieve you of 100, you know, being responsible for 100% of everything. So that's already in the works. You know, we've got 2 hires that are going to be critical to freeing up Mike's time for some of this other stuff, focus stuff that we have to do. And, you know, that's gonna be a business manager, and then, down the road here in a few months, it will be maybe toward third quarter, it will be a deputy, administrator. Mike's gonna retire sometime in the next few years, so we have to be ready for that. So I think we're being, you know, we're putting those things in place so that we can get these things accomplished.
Okay.
Manager Schmaltz has his hand up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
let me, I had my
Oh,
hand up.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. My apologies.
No, no problem at all. I just think we're a little off track right now in terms of talking about the building. We certainly would love to do that. In fact, even have Yanni run a session on it sometime, but I think we should try to finish up what we're doing. We've still got another half of the meeting to do the work on this flood control thing that we want to look at tonight.
Yeah,
So I think, you know, the reason we went into this vision, mission, and values was to have it so that the public understands us better. And what we're missing right now is what I suggested before, is we don't have a short write-up of the 4 or 5 priorities that we have to work on. And the other thing that's confusing, I think, is that we have so many activities that we're in monitoring, we're in AIS, we're in all these other program type things that we're doing, getting grants. But all that stuff, and I call it stuff, has to fit under 2 or 3 priorities. And that's why I think that we've talked about continuing the water quality improvement program. That's got to be a big priority. That's in our mission statement. And
Mhm.
under that follows AIS, it follows monitoring, all those other things support that. Now we're moving away from water quality, we're moving back into the flood vulnerability. And then there's a number of things that fit under that. And then we've already talked about the issue of the office space, which is not in our vision mission, but that's an important thing. The one thing that we added to our vision and mission that was not there before was the idea of, I'm going to read this. We see a future of continued collaboration with our citizens. That was not in our statement before. And we feel very strongly that we have to teach our people how to fish rather than giving them the fish. So if we can have them working with us to maintain the water qualities that we have by having a good understanding of what's required, it's going to save us a lot of time and the money in the future. So those are the four key outline headings that everything else fits under, in my opinion. So I think if you write a short paragraph about those 4 things, I think we'll have it captured. And I think Manager Anderson got off to a good start, but I'm suggesting that maybe someone like Emily, who did a great job on putting this all together in our July 2024 budget meeting, which the slides are here, by the way, which you can look at, that reinforces the exact same thing I said. So I think if she could write up those paragraphs, we could use that as a starting point, and then maybe work around trying to revise the wordsmithing of that document. Because we're going to need something people can read besides these 3 things. Vision, mission, and values kind of leaves you dry. I want to know where the meat is and where my tax dollars are going, basically. And that's what that last paragraph or 2 paragraphs has to do. So I just thought I'd throw that out again to try to get us back on track here. I think that's probably the most important thing we have to accomplish here in terms of not necessarily tonight, but we have to get that done sooner than later.
President Anderson, Yanni,
Yes. Ma'am
I might
Chbaki?
jump in here. I think we're at a really critical point in our strategic planning. The whole intent of our planning has been to kind of alignment, connecting the dots so that we're all pulling in the same direction. I think that's what has been lacking. I mean, we have new managers who aren't so new on board, and we kind of get what's going on, but there's some disconnects. And so what we're doing with our strategic planning is identifying our mission, our vision, and our values, but we've also got a 2025 budget. We've got a 10-year plan. We have performance reviews that are being performed that include SMART goals. You know, how are all these things connected? And that's how we move forward as an organization. Steve has brought up some good points that could be part of that alignment process. So I think, you know, that's what I see where we are at in this conversation. And I think it's a very critical point. Yanni, I don't know, how do you pull us together with that in mind?
Yeah, no. And I mean, I don't think anything that was said tonight is off track, right? I think it validates the need for something like this, okay? And some of these initiatives, the new building, for instance, like, there's a lot to unpack there, and there needs to be protected time and alignment on where that's going. And just to kind of think about where this common thread lies, like, well, what is that new building? Is there an education aspect to it? Is there open space that's connected to it for the public to come and actually utilize and enjoy something that we've created that gives us an outlet to educate, right? To manage public relations, to help with that. So I think, like, truly, if everything we do aligns with the mission, vision, and values that we have here, and again, we have the scientific side of things, but this is an organization. There's people that are a part of this. There's complexity, whether we like it or not. Right? There's things that are needed to be able to give us the capacity and ability to continue to do what we've been doing for decades. But I think this all makes sense. And I'm just, just maintaining a hot list here. I have, it sounds like most of you are looking at this as like each 10-year plan is 2 5-year strategic plans. right? And that's kind of the language we're speaking and the timeline we're operating within. And I'm okay with that. I can meet us there. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and we don't need to change it. But I do think that we need to be incredibly clear with what those 5 years look like, making sure that everyone here is a part of that, and be as clear and concise as possible, right? But also as simple and easy to understand and take action as possible with a lot of this. You know, the new building itself, if step one is a 2-hour meeting amongst the board to outline some of the parameters of what that needs to be, great. And if step two is to hire a consultant to drive that entire initiative from start to finish for us, that's okay. But we all need to be on the same page that that's the path. And that's actually how we're going to get this done. The intricacies of what that building is doesn't matter for this particular argument or for this particular exercise, right? And I think Manager Bakke said it perfectly. It's like, this is all about alignment. That is the purpose of going through this, to make sure that everything that we do up top, we have systems, processes, and clear communication channels and the skill set to convey that down to the people to execute things. And we don't take reactive measures to be able to patch holes or fix this or do that or incorporate this, that every single thing we do, one foot in front of the other, is done with intention. And we might feel that way, that we are, because we're building these big plans that tell us exactly what we're doing, but there's so much more to it, right? It's the staff. How do they manage their time? It's how do we convey and validate what we've done to the community, et cetera. So I agree with President Smaltz here in regards to, you know, what is kind of the public facing meat on the bone? What are the things, right, that kind of meet the values where they are, that align with a specific time period in regards to where people, like what we're doing with the resources that we're given, right? But in my opinion, that's something that should probably be a part of this plan. And we should allocate the time to do it, and construct it, and incorporate that into the mission, vision, values, or have it as a part of our handouts or our website or whatever it is. Like, that's an initiative to complete that. It might seem small, but if we don't plan for it, it's just going to be a reactive thing that we just kind of put together. So I think
I don't think it's a small thing. You know, I don't know how much
that's great.
access you, pardon me?
I was just going to say that's fantastic. It might be small in relation to, you know, I don't know, cleaning the water in a lake over the course of years, etc. But it's not small in regards to.
No, I don't think that there's any small things. I mean, you know, they're important for what purpose they're designed for, or that they're, you know, they're planned for. But I don't know if you've seen or had access to the sub-watershed plans that we get from our EOR partners. But those are very concise plans, action plans, and they're in order of importance. And those are done for each of the sub-watersheds. The best one was the one done for Forest Lake.
Okay.
And there was a booklet created, and it had 9 or 10 projects of various sizes in the importance, you know, of doing them. So the highest pollutant areas, for example, were tackled first. But there's a plan laid out for each of these sub-watersheds, including Bone Lake, and it'll be the same for Comfort, Little Comfort, or Big Comfort. And that's a very clear action plan for the public to understand, and especially in the areas where they live, on what's going to happen and how long it's going to take to happen. Sometimes it's up to 5 years, you know, it just takes the time that it's going to take. But they have very clear information for that particular area. I think the failure again was using that information in the right way to communicate with the public. And we're addressing that with the hopeful add of experts in that area. I need to talk to Adam about that too, on where we're at with that. But anyway, so these are things that have been talked about and that have been planned and are being implemented. And so to me, again, we've got a very clear action plan with our engineers on what we need to do on the water area. The entire resiliency program or green space program with all of its subcategories, flooding and so forth, that's pretty well laid out. And so with the special projects that we've had EOR do on helping us to identify wetlands and trees and you know, groves and so forth that we need to protect, we're pretty well on our way for that. So again, to me, it's an operational issue, and we need to maybe have an action plan for those things. But I think it's gonna be really hard to try to outdo what we get from our engineers on the project side. So maybe we can just take their pieces and then add that to, you know, what we end up doing for the operational side of the business.
I think it should just be linked in, right? If there's a particular initiative or something that we're pursuing that's going to take an extended period of time, and we've spent resources, right, on a professional to give us that kind of one foot in front of the other kind of step, that linear process that's necessary, then it should just say, this is what we're doing. It's a priority. We are allocating resources, meaning time within our staff, to be able to execute this. Right? We're all okay with that. Sounds great.
Yeah, and it's in writing, ready for the public consumption, yes. Okay.
Awesome. I would like to see, and I'm going to see if I can get Emily just to send over that one for Comfort Lake. I think Comfort Lakes is the one that you said that you like the most in regards
Forest
to
Lake. Forest Lake.
Okay. Just so I can get my eyes and see what that looks like. But they are, to my understanding, these are pretty robust documents, right? They're pretty large in regard into what's involved.
Well, yes, I mean, the technical piece of it, but the one I'm talking about gave the statistical data on why these areas needed to be addressed and in which order. And there are documents for Bone Lake like that as well. But I think the way that the Forest Lake one was put together is really, really superb. And it's easy to understand. It's not too text heavy. People get it, and what the accomplishments or the goals, you know, that are laid out. And so I'm looking forward to that for the two sub watersheds that are left, Little and Big Comfort. And I know that, you know, we've got people working on that. So once again, we've already taken some steps to add personnel so that we can tackle all of these things in a reasonable amount of time and spread the workload for the administrator out so that we don't have to have these periods where all of a sudden all these unexpected things happen and there's just not the bandwidth to continue on with these other projects.
Okay.
So I guess my point in repeating all of this is that we are far along the path, as far as I'm concerned, with this, and to speed it up, if we can concentrate on those operational human resources kinds of things that we know we're going to need. And that's also in motion. So we can put together, I think, a concise strategic plan for the next 5 years on the operational side, and then rely on the engineers to give us the project side.
Okay. So a couple things that I have written here, and then we're going to kind of go through this. I'm going to let everybody, I'm going to share a couple resources that were brought back in regards to attempts to kind of, put initiatives or priorities in regards to the next 5 years together. And I'll let everybody kind of go through theirs and explain it. I have one here from the staff as well. I think it was sent to you in an email. So we're going to go through that and see it and see just, the mindset. I think that's the one thing that I take away from that document is just the mindset that everyone's in on the staff side of things in regards to a lot of this, and how granular we get with some of the initiatives or some of the small little kind of action steps that need to occur to get us to that higher level kind of goal. but just based off this conversation, right? If we think high level here, public relations and community relations is, I mean, they're kind of one and the same, but PR in general, right? And just communicating effectively with our community. Education, validating what we've done, and ensuring that they truly understand the value that they've received with some of the projects that we've been able to complete and the projects that are currently ongoing. We need a new building. It's been on the docket for quite some time. We've been discussing it. We need to figure out exactly what needs to happen and all get aligned on that to be able to move this forward. Climate resiliency is a topic that is consistent across the board. Shoreline restoration / cost share. I'm sure there's projects that align and fall into both of those. Same thing with lake water quality, okay? I'm sure there's projects that have already been initiated that we're just managing or executing consistently. We don't need to go detailed into what those projects are. We just need to know what they are. That's all. We don't need to know the nuts and bolts of it. We just, a general idea of like, okay, well, what's the, you know, from an operational perspective, how much time is this going to occupy over the course of the next year, 5 years, et cetera? And ensuring that we have, you know, capacity to be able to sustain that while we start to kind of weave some of these other things into it as well. And that goes for all of those. But those are pretty consistent. I'm going to start with Manager Anderson. Let's start with this. So this, and just so I'm understanding this correctly, this is something that you have recently put together, right? In regards to kind of a 5-year plan for the
Yes.
district, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Awesome. Has anyone taken the time to really kind of make their way through this? It sounds like President Smalt has, but anyone else?
That's not Manager Anderson being displayed right now.
This is not.
There we go.
Is that what everyone's seeing?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So do you want to take some time and kind of work our way through this? So I'm going to start to just distill some of this over back into our other document. And again, we'll go through the staff, and if anyone else has taken some time to kind of outline some of their own priorities in regards to that 10-year plan. And again, we'll start to kind of allocate these things to a couple high-level resources or high-level initiatives or priorities or themes, if you will, right? That kind of align. And everyone's speaking about the same ones. We just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
That's on it. Should be very long. It's just
Okay. So 7:15, switch over. Okay. You know, Yanni, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
We've got to add to the special meeting tonight on another topic that we need to get to. Can I make a suggestion that we look at these documents, maybe if you can pull them together? Because there is a lot of sameness about what staff has said and what the other board managers have said. And I think if we can pull that all together, and have that as one document, we can go through that a lot quicker. And, you know, combine the things that are similar and the things that stand out, we can look at and choose which ones we want to go with. At our next meeting, would that work?
I'm happy to do that. And if there's anything that I have not received from anybody that wants to kind of, you know, that's, I mean, again, this is kind of what we did. We used that process for our mission, our vision, our values, right? Just kind of giving the opportunity for people to voice.
And that worked really well. So if we could do the same, does the board agree? That might be a little easier to work with if we have it all consolidated.
Agree. I was suggesting before we have to come up with 3 or 4 headings for sections that we want to cover. Everything, all these other things we work on and take action on has to fit under some category.
Yeah.
We can't have 15 categories. We have to have the 3 or 4 major priorities that we're trying to work for the next 5, 10 years. And that's what once we get those, everything else falls under that to support those things. So it
Yeah.
becomes much clearer. So I think I agree with what you're suggesting, Manager Anderson.
Okay, good.
Does
Good.
everybody feel like they have 3 or 4 categories?
I've got 4 that I put in mind from the very beginning.
Yep.
That I think that I came out of the strategic plan that we put together, that Emily put together, and those slides, and if everybody looks at them again and reads through that, it makes a lot of sense in
Okay.
terms of how it reads. And that was from last July.
Our
So,
staff,
so I've just taken those ideas and put them onto 4 categories, 4 headings.
Okay.
And then I think everything else could fit under one of those 4, and maybe some of them in both areas. Like watershed, shoreline restoration certainly improves our water quality improvements, but it also has to do with, the green space efforts too, to a certain extent. So that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to do.
Well,
President
and that's-
Anderson,
Yes, Manager Bucket, go ahead.
if I can make a suggestion as well, I think the major headings should be those goals, those goal categories that are in the 10-year plan. I've highlighted in the document I sent to Emily, and I think Yanni, you've got it too. I've highlighted 5 of those in yellow that are priorities in my mind. But I think if we can use those as the headings for our conversation, that would be helpful, because then we're doing the alignment that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did a breakdown in 2, basically, sub-watershed level, we've got 4. And the other one was district-wide. So a lot of our programs, like we're talking about, fall into that district-wide impact area.
But
So
do
I
they
think,
fall into the 10-year plan categories? Because the outline that I saw from the 10-year plan was permitting program, monitoring and data assessment, non-point source pollution abatement, education and outreach, interagency communication, research, measurement of programs, grant research and preparation, operations and maintenance, aquatic invasive species prevention and management, land acquisition and management, and watershed planning and resiliency. I think those are the headings that we should be using for the alignment piece.
but
Am
those
I wrong
are-
about that?
Yes, I think you
Those-
are, because half of those,
headers, those headers have been there forever. I mean, these are standard programs that we have supported for 20 years now. So I look at it differently, and we want to maintain what we've done, obviously. And I mentioned that in mine too, is that I didn't list them all out here, but we want to keep doing what we've been doing that is showing results in one way or another. AIS, there's no way that we can take that away. All of these things are important, but they're not new directional things for us. And I guess I was concentrating more on that, with the assumption, of course, that these things are going to stay.
again, most of these can be put under 2 or 3 categories, headings. I mean, monitoring data, that's a tactic. That supports our water quality program. Non-point solution pollution abatement, that goes under water quality again.
Well, these are district-wide, and see, we're looking at different definitions to say the same thing. To me, that's all district-wide.
Right.
And, when
supporting-
we get, when we get into specific programs, like I've been talking about, Little Comfort, Big Comfort, we're coming into that era where that focus is going to be on those sub-watersheds, even though we've had projects, in those areas in the past, but we haven't had that singular focus like we've had with the others. So I think that when we get down to that sub-watershed level after the first go-round, we've got different things that are going to happen in each of the sub-watersheds that are going to be unique to them. So maybe we could talk about how we're going to do those unique issues that are only popping up in one sub-watershed, like, for example, the ice jacking on Forest Lake, that is not occurring on our other lakes, but how do we address that? So that would be something I think strategically we need to think about.
I'm just trying to find some alignment
Yep.
between all the
No, so I'm
programs that
gonna-
we have. And it's
Mhm.
really confusing for me to see a 10-year plan and then talk about a strategic plan and not tie the two together. So I'm just a little confused with that, that's all.
Mhm.
So the plan that we're creating is for internal purposes. If there's things that we need to convey through initiatives, through said milestones, through things that we're producing, whether it's a communication style, whether it's a marketing strategy, whether it's public relations, right? All of that would obviously come from this in some way, shape, or form. So everything that people need, are saying, like, they align with this. But again, this is for us. This is to manage
Mhm.
what we are doing, what we are responsible for.
Mhm.
Okay? And what's in the 10-year plan, a lot of that is the scientific element, right? There is a couple in there
Yeah.
that are based on staff and our resources and making sure that, what were they? There was a handful of them. Grant research preparation, measurement of programs, operations and maintenance, right? Those aren't necessarily project based, but a lot of this is scientific project oriented, right? That's kind of the theme, right? Or the foundation behind it. I mean, I would go even broader, honestly. And if we can bucket everything into either projects or project based, or have that scientific bucket. Okay. If there was another bucket that maybe was community outreach / education. If another one was operational, meaning meetings, leadership, hiring, things of that capacity. But if you think about this of like a well-oiled organization that's able to classify all of the things that we do, because it's not just scientific project-based stuff. That's a huge piece of it, and that is how we prove value to our community. So I'm not discrediting that, but there's other things that need to come into this, so there is full alignment, not just on the things that we're pursuing from a project perspective, but also how we're running the organization, how we're communicating with our community, and everything in between. That makes sense? So I think we can probably simplify aspects of the 10-year plan. And if some of those things have just been like placeholders in regards to just categories, right, that we stand behind and we need to go deeper on or figure out other projects that have said categories, I think that's great, but we can think of something even more broad that houses that. All right. And I may have misunderstood here, but it sounds like the board has other non-relevant matters that kind of need to be sorted out in the last half hour here. Did I understand that correct, Manager Anderson, or no?
No, I don't think so. I think that we're saying the same things, but in different ways, so it might sound different to you, but it doesn't sound different to me. It's just how we're going to categorize this stuff and how we're going to look at laying out the plan. But I think the first step, like we just talked about, is doing what we did before, taking all of these separate ideas that people have submitted and putting them together so that when we look at this again, we've got everything aligned,
Sure.
on what we're talking about, and we can make decisions faster that way as a group.
I agree. My only ask, and hopefully we can get some alignment on this before we part ways today. I will synthesize everything that's been sent to me into one concise document that we can then go through, and everyone can speak to and have suggestions, right? Make additions, subtractions, etc. But if you think about a business, okay, through that lens, and I hate to keep making this analogy, it's just the world that I live in, right? And you think about the hats that a business owner wears, right? We've got marketing, we have sales, we have productivity, we have leadership, we have financials, right? Those hats, if you will. What are our hats? What are our hats? And what do we think that they are? And that might be a question for Mike, that might be a question for everybody. But like, what are the buckets in which we are making contact shifts consistently to make sure that everything is being managed, right, and supported as effectively as we possibly can with the time that we're allotted.
Well, I think that's where we get into a little bit of a divide. You know, to me, it's district-wide or sub-watershed wide or focused. So you've got, you know, distinct things, and the climate resiliency or green space effort is actually district-wide, but you have to do the work within each of the sub-watersheds. But overall, it's affecting the entire watershed. So that's always been the way I look at it, delineated that way. And our programs are all district-wide. It doesn't matter what the program is. The program is for the entire district. So that's where I don't like to see that granular definition when I'm working at this level. I want to see what's focused on the sub-watersheds. There's 4 of them, so you can have projects in each one of them. And then what's district-wide to support.
Okay.
And that's easier to explain to people too. Okay, we're doing all these, you know, clean water stuff, we're taking all the readings and so forth. People get that, but you know, what are you doing in my area? So it's always good to have that delineation, in my opinion. But I think you had it earlier, we've got different opinions coming in, and I think having that pulled together, like we did for the vision and mission, and then bouncing that off of each other and whittling it down until we've got an end product that we can all agree with.
President Anderson,
Yes.
thank you for that. I really understand your lens now of viewing topics or project or by having the 2 pieces of district-wide and sub-watershed. That's both for me. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So
I think a perfect example is what Manager Schmalz brought up, is that ice jacking is an issue. That doesn't affect Bone Lake, it doesn't affect the Comfort Lakes, but it is a problem in Forest Lake. So we have to do some different juggling with that, you know, to get it into the budget and all of that kind of stuff. So that's, you know, keep that in mind too. Things come up that you don't plan on. And we're working with Mother Nature, and, you know, she does what she wants to do, so.
can I make one last point here, just because I think we're talking
Yes.
about 2 different perspectives here. We start out with vision, mission, and values. And if we continue that discussion, we need to frame that up in terms of communicating what we're all about and what we're doing to the community. And that's where my 4 points that I put on my sheet are going. If you want to talk about how we run our business and the operational organization, which is what I think your chart is starting to do with all that detailed stuff you had, just go to our budget sheet. Because we've got administration, we've got programs, as Manager Anderson said, which go across all the whole area, and then you've got the projects, which are individual special item things. So that's, you know, that covers everything we do, and it's on several sheets of paper.
That's perfect.
So I think we got to separate out. If we try to do the operational thing and put it in the strategic plan, shortened version, it's not going to fit. So we're asking different questions, or we have a different audience when we're talking about the public. So that's the point I think.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't happen to agree with that, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay, but the way we run things, right? Administrative, okay, and that's staffing, that's maintenance, that's the building, that's anything relevant. I guess budgets would fall into that. The financial element would fall into that. Okay, and then we have projects and we have programs. Now, how would you define a project and a program? What are the differences between those 2?
And a project is an engineering thing, as a capital investment program, which is everyone is different. Everyone is different because it's unique. A program, as Manager Anderson said, are all the things that we do to support the organization, aquatic invasive species, monitoring, et cetera, et cetera. Those are support functions that allow us to do what we do across the whole watershed. Why don't you, Emily, send Yanni our budget sheets, would you please, so he can look through them? I think it'll become perfect because he knows a lot of terms in the budget sheets now because he's been here for a while. I think you'll see it falls right in place.
I think I might have those. And I mean, like, listen, for internal purposes, it's a great way to look at everything, right? How are we going to convey this to the public? Maybe not so much, right? And there might be another.
No, I agree.
That's necessary.
I agree 100%.
But it's got a nice little bow on it, right? It's easy to start to kind of segregate these things and compartmentalize them, and then start to really see workloads, time commitments, resources, etc. when it comes to it. It sounds like projects fit within programs, right? Programs is kind of the macro overarching initiatives that we're pursuing. We use projects to get from point A to point B.
Not really.
No.
Projects are the engineering projects that we do. $3 million capital programs that take 2 years.
Okay.
Construction projects. And then they're all supported with stuff that we've gotten out of the programs. We get there because we have the data to tell us where we should dig and how deep we should dig.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep. Are most programs done internally, or do we use subcontractors, outsourced resources to?
We used to outsource everything, and we brought everything in to save taxpayer money and to have better control.
Okay.
Our engineers still oversee the programs that need their oversight.
Okay.
So there's still that oversight.
Okay.
Anyway, I think we've got an outline for you to pursue, correct?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's a couple
Okay.
of lenses to look through with this. Ultimately,
Mhm.
we have the big macro 10-year plan. We have a couple 5-year plans that each individuals or the staff have put together. I can start to compartmentalize some of this, get rid of some of the
Yeah.
redundancy, and bring something
Yeah.
back to the board where we can slow down and actually start putting these puzzle pieces together and get the
Yeah.
alignment that I think everyone's.
Yeah. And I think another important point for you to always remember is that the sub-watersheds are unique. So what you do in one is not necessarily going to be something that you do in the other. So just keep that in mind too. And, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so when's our next meeting with you, Yanni? Oops.
We actually don't have anything scheduled.
Okay,
There was a couple time with kind of canceling the last meeting, and then a little time went by before we had this one scheduled. So I'm going to kind of open this up to Emily. The only week I could not meet, because I did block all of my Tuesdays just to kind of keep this open-ended so we can protect space. The only Tuesday I cannot meet is Tuesday, the 25th of February. I will be on a work retreat with the company that I work with. But outside of that, if Tuesdays are where we're, where everyone's getting together, I'm happy to conform to that.
okay. All right, well, we'll work with Emily then to get a date for everybody. Because that'll take a little time.
Okay.
And then you need some time to put all of this data together,
Yeah,
all
I
these
think
inputs. Yeah,
we
all
can
right,
do.
good. All right, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, Emily, you've got that down as your to-do, right?
Got it.
Good, thank you. All right, so let's move on. If we can pull the agenda back up.
For one moment.
Jackie B, can you do that?
I can pull it up. I have it right here.
Okay. Okay, so the next is the flood resiliency community engagement. And then some subheads, flood resiliency planning process and community workshop presentation slides. So Emily, are you gonna be the announcer for this?
President Anderson and managers, we have Camilla Correll with EOR here and Dan Pfeiffer from Zan Associates, who've been
helping us put this together, and they'll be our primary presenters at tomorrow night's workshop. Adam Jelm will also he'll be given kind of an intro at the workshop. He'll be there in person, but I'm going to turn it over to Camilla and Dan.
Wonderful, thank you.
Give me a second. Let me
Dan, okay.
pull up the slides. And so walk through what we are going to do tomorrow night. So just as a reminder, we sent out letters. We sent out about, I think it was close to 600 letters, went out to addresses, primarily residents, but also some of the business addresses, based on the initial flood modeling. And then we did do some flyering in targeted areas to those same addresses. So they received letters, and then they also received a flyer on their door inviting them to register and attend the workshop. 11 individuals registered to attend the workshop tomorrow night. There may be others that show up that didn't register, but we were targeting, really to do a kind of in-depth workshop. You don't want to get above kind of that 15 mark, otherwise it becomes very difficult to facilitate without breaking into a bunch of small groups throughout that. And as a reminder, really the purpose of the workshop is to have conversations with individuals, with property owners or residents whose properties may have been affected by flooding in the past, or they have an interest in flooding, and really trying to gather information from them to do some confirmation of the initial modeling work that Camilla's team has done. So it's not, the goal isn't to present the model and have discussion about the model. It's really to hear from the community and create an opportunity for them to provide us feedback and information, which then can be used to confirm some of those modeling assumptions. So we'll start
Dan, I
with.
have a quick question.
Yep.
Yeah. What did you use for screening criteria to make sure they had flood experience, personal flood experience?
Well, so with the letters going out, inviting them to a flood resilience workshop, assuming that people who have an interest in flooding would be the ones that RSVP'd to it. So they're kind of self-selecting for it through getting both mailers and flyers on their door.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, just a further point though, you were targeting people that lived in those hot zones, right? That EOR identified, okay.
Yeah, we were looking for areas where the flooding in the initial flood model, our first screening criteria was that the roadways near them or their properties would be affected in the flooding. So, and then expanding outwards from there. So,
okay, good.
Kind of in those areas where there was a lot more of that potential to exist. So not everyone that received a letter is, their property wasn't shown as being impacted by the flooding, but they were close enough to it that they might be impacted trying to navigate in the area.
Okay, good, thank you.
And so it's a mix of presentation and discussion items and activities. And so we start with kind of a quick welcome. This is really just myself, Adam, doing that initial welcome to, for everyone in the room. Then we do a kind of quick overview of the watershed district, just to kind of ground everyone what a watershed district is, where it is, those kind of items. I think most people are familiar with these slides. I believe Adam, these slides were given at the 25th anniversary event that occurred late last year. So just kind of grounding everyone in what it is, the 6 objectives, the map, so where it is, and then grounding where the flow of the water inside the district is. And we move into introductions of the participants. And so asking them to share their names, where they live or work in the district, so the nearest neighborhood or lake. And then what is their why? Why are they interested in flood resiliency, and what are they hoping to learn tonight? Really, the purpose of this is to get them to start talking with each other and with us, kind of that icebreaker. Then we're going to go into a high-level overview of flood risks. And so Camilla will be presenting these, really just trying to ground participants that, you know, Minnesota has gotten warmer and wetter, that there's more frequent events, rain events, which help lead to these potentials for flooding events, and then walk through why we're doing this. So kind of the background of what brought us to this point. And then after those few slides, then we start moving into some activities. So the first activity that we're going to ask people to do is to use, I've taken district maps, the baseline maps that Camilla's team has been using. We've removed all of the flood modeling from it. So we're just using aerials with aerial imagery with the roads on it. And we're going to ask them to mark it up for areas where they've experienced flooding in the past. So whether that's, and using some colors of markers to indicate whether that's, you know, could be a running sump pump in the basement, could be a wet backyard, could be a wet basement, could be water overtopping roadways, those kind of items. Gathering that information on maps that we can use as comparison. Then there's some facilitated discussion questions. So how has flooding affected your life, homes, business, community services in the past? And then asking if people who have lived in the community for a number of years, have they seen or experienced a change in flooding impacts over time? Then we're going to do some identifying vulnerabilities. So this begins with some overview of what those are. So the flood vulnerability assessment that Camilla's team completed. So just grounding everyone in the room so that they're prepared to start having those discussion about what those key community resources are that should be, you know, really focused on for protection from flood events. Showing some social vulnerability mapping, just kind of at a high level. And then having those discussions about local factors that contribute to flooding, having a discussion around the environmental or socioeconomic vulnerabilities that are heightened by flood, and then really those key community assets that are most at risk by flooding. So we've done that initial overview, or Camilla's team has done that initial kind of review, but also hearing from the community what items they see, what facilities, what locations they see as key community assets for protection. Then we move into flood reduction strategies. We start with a overview grounding of what those could be. So, you know, having high level items, what flood reduction strategies are, moving into some of the items, the realistic items that can be used in the district, and some photos, examples of what those are that are actually in the district, because we want people to think about, you know, those strategies that are implementable, things that exist that can be done. And then we're gonna have a discussion about kind of what are the short-term and long-term measures that could help manage flood risks. Are there successful flood management practices that they've seen used elsewhere? And then having a discussion about how can we balance development and flood resilience in the watershed district. Really, the purpose is to start having people have those discussions around that it's multiple different layers are going to need to be responsible for flood reduction strategies. That the district can't do, the watershed district can't be the only ones working on it, that it does take multiple layers of government, and it takes the residents, businesses, property owners be involved. Then we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. That's really time for me to lay out the strategies so that I can set up the final activity or the final hands-on activity for the participants, and that's using stickers to mark off their top 2 to 3 preferred strategies for flood reduction. And then we move into our final kind of discussion section, which is on collaboration. So identifying roles for who can do what. So what roles do the businesses, residents, local and state government play in supporting flood reduction efforts? How can everyone work together to collaborate on these? And then what resources or information do participants need to better prepare for future flooding events? And then we move into some closing remarks, identifying kind of those key takeaways. And then we have a closing slide that just talks about how to stay in touch, how to get more information. And then we will be handing out a just a 1-pager that has some additional resources that they could look at for helping to plan for emergency preparedness type items for flood resiliency. Questions?
Hi, Dan. Dave Baki here. I like the way you've laid this out. It makes a lot of sense to me. I appreciate the planning you put into this. Can you pull up the slide about social vulnerability again?
Yeah.
I just, there's the groupings that are listed there. Social vulnerability.
This one or the map?
There it is. Nope, not that one. Yes, that's the one. It lists non-English speakers. Non-English speakers is a really small group of people. It might be better categorized as English as a second language. That's a much broader group of people. Because typically the non-English speakers would be a very small group.
I can
But
address that
English
question.
English as a second language is a much broader categorization, and people who are bilingual, that's really commendable rather than saying non-English, I think.
So the data layers that inform the social vulnerability layer were taken from the census data. So that's just one of the layers of information that's available in the census tract. So we can change the wording for the presentation, but I don't know that we can recreate the social vulnerability layer to include a different data layer than what's already included.
Do you know, Camilla, oftentimes there's it's less than very well is the like
Yeah, sometimes it's
baseline
worded
for it.
that way.
Yep.
Speaks English less than well. We can change it to that.
That would not be preferable. I'm trying to be sensitive to a cultural group of people who speak English as a second language, because they truly are bilingual or multilingual, which is more than I can say about myself.
I agree.
And,
I just don't think that that's what is actually reflected in the data set, or it wouldn't be true to the social vulnerability mapping exercise that we went through last year to create this. So I'm not really sure what a good solution
If I-
is. We could draw attention to it and say, we could kind of speak to what this data layer represents and what the source of the information is coming from.
Camilla, if I might ask a question?
Yeah, please.
When I see that there, what I see that as these are people who do not speak English and are particularly vulnerable in these areas. That's the vulnerability. If they speak 2 languages, that vulnerability goes away.
Maybe they may not understand, I mean, I have some ability to speak the Czech language, but in an emergency, I would not be able to follow instructions.
Good point. Good point.
Very well, you know, so.
I'm reflecting on this because in my position, we very often have runners coming in to pick up materials who speak no English whatsoever. And that's very different than those who can kind of converse enough to get the process done. I guess that I just saw that as people who we simply do not have the ability to communicate to. They're a very vulnerable class then.
Right.
Yeah, there's got to be some shades there somewhere.
Well, I think if you can't change the header, I think what you suggested, Camilla, to address Manager Baki's and Manager Taves's concerns is that you speak it, you know, you say it the way that you said that you were going to say it, which is more sensitive. And then also point out that this is a government document. And, you know, we're going through the DOJ process, so who knows? This may change in the future, but for right now, I think everybody understands that when you get something from the federal government, there's really no latitude. You know, you get it the way it comes out.
So just annotate that its source is
Yeah,
from federal or from.
yeah, that was a good point. Mike just source it out on the slide as coming from the federal government
Or whatever.
Yep.
or wherever it came from. Yeah,
I can do that for sure. Hmm.
all right.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions?
Not hearing any.
No,
I have one other quick question. So do you have to show up in person to participate, or will this be a Zoom also?
Nope, it is in person. So it is in person tomorrow, just because doing a mixed hybrid environment on a like large kind of workshop, it doesn't really work all that well. It's very, I think you get less, your output is less for both, like both users' experiences are diminished by it.
I'm planning to attend. I don't know if anybody else from the board is going to be there, but I plan to attend tomorrow. And I did have a question, Emily, on Manager Schmaltz brought this up earlier today. Where do we go into the high school? There's a lot of different entrances, so where should we park?
So the arts entrance, so after 4, it becomes the arts entrance is the one that's used. It's the one that's it's basically on the backside of the building off of Good Godfrey. I'm trying to remember the road right off the top of my head right now. Give me 1 second.
I can also send out, Dan had an annotated map. I can send that to the full board if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
everyone that registered got an email last week with the instructions, and then there will be signage when you get to the door. There will be signage directing where to go.
Okay.
It's room 206, so kind of by the media center, just past the auditorium. So when you walk in that door, the arts door, you just keep walking straight down the hallway, and then you'll see the room to like the front right after you pass the auditorium.
I think they have door numbers, don't they, on the doors?
I just know it because it was labeled as arts, performing arts or arts above it.
Well, there's got to be at least 15 entrances to that building. So I think you're on the side, then on the south side of the building where the fields are. Is that correct?
Yep, there's a large parking lot,
Yeah.
and then you have the gym kind of to what would be to your
Right.
west side.
Right. And
of
then you have the big auditorium that holds about 300 people. You walk right by that. That's where
Yep.
we have our
Yeah.
annual meeting. But you should have a sign out on the street when they're driving around trying to find out where the heck they should go. They'll see that sign and stop and park there. If you have it on the door, they're not going to see it. So you need to have like a sign out you know, on the sidewalk that they can see as they drive by looking for the entrance. That's what I would recommend. Because you can have a lot of people late or give up if they can't find it. It's a very complicated. We have our annual meeting there for a number of years. And every year we have people that get lost, even though we have very specific instructions. So
Mhm.
just a
Managers, I-
forewarning, you only got 7 people coming or 11 people coming. You don't want to lose half of them.
Yeah, managers, I see Adam has the placards out by the back door, so I'm gonna expect those are
Good,
for that purpose. So,
okay,
they're
And then-
like the sandwich signs.
yeah,
they're right there.
Yeah. That would be perfect. That's what we use.
yeah. And Emily's gonna send us a diagram also, so that'll be good. Okay,
then
thank you.
I had a question. If we come, then you do not want us to participate in the group then, obviously, right?
My preference would be listen and
Right.
you could participate a little bit, but don't be aware that you have formal power as a manager of the watershed districts, that you don't that you're not taking up more space. And because people will be intimidated. They can also not say things because they see that kind of you have formal power in the system. And so just be aware of it. If you're talking to people, just listen to what they have to say, maybe probing questions, that kind of stuff. But don't try not to overtake the conversation. That's always my concern when a appointed board or elected board participates in the process, that they overtake the participants from the community.
I would recommend,
think-
Manager Anderson, that we just decide that if we go, we just observe on the outside and not get involved. It's-
Well, that's my stance. I never thought about getting involved in this, honestly, so I'm glad you mentioned that, Dan, and I'm glad you asked the question, Steve, so. Yeah,
Okay, good.
President Anderson,
yes,
might I ask, it just out of curiosity, if any other managers are planning to attend?
I'm gonna be
How
there
about-
for a few minutes to see how it goes, to get started, and then I'll probably leave.
okay. I'll probably stay for the whole thing. It's always good to get citizen input, even when it's only 11. That's 11 times more than we get at the meeting, so that's good. Okay, what's next?
I just want to mention that this was very well done, and I think it's, we all had some concerns about what we're gonna see, and I think this has been a nice blend of procedures and process, so I think it'll be very helpful for us. Thank you.
Yeah, it will. Are there more slides, or is this the last one?
There are no
No.
more slides.
No more
There are
slides,
no more
okay, thank
slides.
you.
Nope. Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next board meeting is February 13th. So everybody, I don't know if you're planning to be on the Zoom or in person, but, we will be here. So we'll see you one way or the other on Thursday
Okay,
at
thanks.
6:30. Thank you.
Motion
Good night,
to adjourn.
everybody.
Yep,
Adjourn?
meeting adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, thanks.
That was a
Okay, consensus to adjourn. Thanks, everyone.